Richard Pattle, welcome and thank you for speaking to India Global Business. You're the co-founder and chief executive officer of True Beacon, a company which professes and operates on client-aligned asset management. You were founded on one simple principle: to create wealth and value for those who believe in India's growth future. Let me start off with a question. How does True Beacon, in applying its method for disrupting the status quo, aim to change the way ultra-high net worth individuals participate and invest in the Indian growth story?
Well, first of all, thanks so much, Robin, for including me in your conversation. And it's fantastic to talk to your viewers and readers as well. True Beacon really, I guess, was founded trying to solve three problems that are quite systemic in the asset management world and the fund world, not just here in India, but across many other platforms globally. The first one is clearly on performance, and the vast majority of fund managers simply have not had a track record in even keeping up with the markets in which they invest into, let alone outperforming. And a big mantra for us is about the outperformance of the capital markets here in India, and specifically the Nifty 50, the 50 largest companies here across the country. Nikhil, obviously my co-founder, Nikhil Kamath, has not only had an extraordinary track record as a very talented trader and investor, and indeed the co-founder of Zerodha, now India's largest stockbroking platform and one of Bangalore's unicorns. But actually, since we launched 18 months ago, we very dramatically outperformed the Nifty 50 here, and we're thrilled with that, and so are our clients. So the first one is about outperformance. Secondly is all around the fund that we've launched and the way that our clients are aligned with us in terms of the fee structure. It's very important. If you're paying the traditional 2 and 20 model, obviously your capital can be eroded incredibly quickly, and we have a 0-10 model, so just 10% of any gain that we actually score for our clients. It's a completely liquid fund as well, unlike most of the competition, and we're co-investing our own proprietary capital alongside it. And then last but not least, I think there's a real strategic angle to this. It's about aligning all of our clients, not just here in India, but around the world, to create a community where they may engage in next generation programs, philanthropy programs, but on the business side, co-investment opportunities, M&A deals, and so on. So that, I guess, is really the crux of True Beacon, and it's been an exciting journey in the first 18 months or so.
Richard, you are in a rather unique position. You are from the UK and you are living and working in India. You are based in Bangalore, which is a pioneering city, not just in India, but one of the pioneering cities in the world. When you take your overall experiences and you apply it across the Indian economic segment, what are the key learnings that you have managed to take home in your stint currently in India and with True Beacon?
Well, I mean, I've been very lucky that I've been traveling to India now for 30 years and have been traveling through all of my previous three work chapters, both in the British military, where I ended up spending a year on exchange with the Indian Armed Forces. I got to know the country incredibly well during that chapter, and then working in the Royal Household in the UK, and then as Vice Chairman of Standard Chartered Private Bank globally out of London, but still coming back to India. I think today is an incredibly exciting time for India. The country itself has modernized hugely since the time when I first came here, but we also now have continuity of government in this country, which I think is very reassuring for international investors in particular. Obviously, there's a huge domestic market, much of which is unsatisfied and underpenetrated in a variety of different sectors. And the wealth creation here is set to continue, of course, over the next few decades, and indeed the economy will grow as well. So I think it's very exciting. Obviously, a week ago we had the Indian budget, which cemented the trajectory for the country. But by and large, both for Indians living here in the country, or indeed for NRIs around the world, I think everyone is very optimistic about the country's trajectory and where and how quickly it will get to being the third largest economy in the world.
What were the things you realized you could do differently with True Beacon in the face of the challenges brought about by the pandemic? Were there any lessons that were learned?
Well, as you say, thinking back to March of last year, it was a pretty dramatic lockdown here in India, as indeed it was in many parts of the world. There's been obviously a gradual easing of the lockdown status throughout the country. I spent most of the lockdown here. I spent just 2 months back in the UK last summer. So it's not quite back to normal, of course, but there is now a growing sense of continuity around businesses in particular, and the way that India has managed to navigate the crisis, touch wood, in a way that other major countries around the world, including indeed my own, have been unable to do. And some of that, I'm sure, when we look at this through the historical lens, will be to do with the innate immunity of the population of this region, but some of it has absolutely been to do with how the government has handled it, and in particular, perhaps, and this is just a theory, the very vigorous way in which the Indian government has closed down schools, which is in contrast to many other countries in the world that have not fared quite so well. We as a business, I think, have had a reasonably active time since perhaps May of last year. And I think for ultra high net worth clients and high net worth clients, our target clients around the world, this pandemic has given them time to evaluate what they're doing in their business, what they're doing in their personal and family lives, but also evaluate their investments. And I think that for the first time, perhaps, if you're a leading business person, you look through your investments and you look at those fees that you've been charged by your wealth management platform, whether the performance goes up or goes down. You start questioning, is this the right platform to be on? And so far, we've been a beneficiary of that. But for us, we're here in our office in central Bangalore as a team of around 20 or so at this point in time. And we're expanding relatively rapidly both here and across India.
Could you detail out True Beacon's immediate plans for us?
Yeah, of course. We continue to be focused on what we do best, and that's around performance, and it's around the alignment with our clients and servicing our clients as we grow them. Not just here onshore, which is incredibly important. We'll be setting up offices throughout the country in due course as we expand our footprint for ultra high net worth families across India, but also increasingly important is the foreign investors. And that's not just NRI investors, perhaps, who might be sitting in the US and Europe and the Middle East and the Far East, but actually for those people perhaps who've never had exposure to the Indian capital markets before. And again, especially because we will be emerging from a COVID pandemic that has been very bruising for people, and in particular international investors perhaps over reliance on China as a capital market in which to invest into. My hope is that India will be a beneficiary in some small way for that international capital, particularly, as I say, for those who have not invested into India before. So an increasing focus on the international market, and so we'll be setting up an office there to cater for global investors into India.
How about taking me into the future, let's say 5 years ahead from now? I would like to ask you to detail out True Beacon's priorities moving ahead. Would you be able to do that for us?
Well, Robin, for the time being, we're very much focused on our existing funds that we operate both here domestically for our Indian ultra high net worth and high net worth clients, but also through Mauritius for our global clients, and that's NRI clients, but also those with perhaps no exposure to India before. We want to ramp up those offerings. We're going to be building up our footprint here across each of the major cities to be more client aligned and focused as we build up our AUM. Internationally, I think is really exciting now. I think that we are in the process now of opening an office in Gift City. That's in Ahmedabad, in Gujarat, for our international clients. That's a special economic zone, one that attracts greater tax credits for indeed our international clients, one which makes us even more transparent and able to service the needs of our global clients as well. So we're setting up offices in strategic locations. In due course, obviously, we will turn our attention to major cities around the world. And really at the moment, we're focused on building our fund offering. But in due course, I think going down the tracks, we'll obviously aim to be a more integrated asset management company, but also really focusing on these ultra high net worth clients, the ones that are sophisticated and want exposure to the capital markets, but without the fees and without the lack of transparency that perhaps they've had in the past.
There has been this recent phenomenon where Gulf-based NRIs are pushing their money into the Indian stock markets. This has been resulting in a 20% month-on-month growth for you. What do you attribute this phenomenon to?
Well, of course, much of the Middle East has been co-built using Indian brains and ingenuity and so on, and particularly in a place like Dubai, where I used to live and work as well. You see that the Indian community there has done an incredible job of not just investing into the Middle East, but keeping their cultural and economic links back into India. I think that there is now a growing realization that India is an important investment destination, whether you're an NRI or not. And I think people are waiting for the type of transparency, hopefully, that we're offering before they start ramping up their assets. They've also seen, of course, that the stock markets here in recent times have delivered for them as well. And indeed, if we look at the currency depreciation as well, that also has been more subdued than it has been historically. So for these reasons, and indeed Indian families, the diaspora is increasingly dominant around the world. We're seeing a lot of uptick, as you say, in FDI into India.
I would like to ask you for your current assessment of the Indian economy as it turns the corner from the pandemic.
Well, of course, we had the budget just about a week ago here in India, which was very well received. And I think the country faces, like many countries, if not all countries around the world, short-term challenges, which are around mitigating the effects of this pandemic, getting the population safe, and also then, of course, moving into the other phase, which is really rejuvenating and investing into the economy to grow it back to pre-pandemic levels. In addition, of course, India perhaps has always historically suffered from a comparative lack of infrastructure, and that might be health infrastructure, it might be transport infrastructure, but that is very much being put right in the country. I think that will be a huge lever for the success of India. Again, if we look at other major competitors around the world, if we look at, for example, China, for big supply contracts globally, if we look at ASEAN countries in terms of manufacturing, all of that infrastructure will be critically important as we all start to really leverage the unique opportunity and competitive advantage that India has to begin with. So we remain, and I remain, incredibly bullish on the next 10, 20 years for India. Yes, there will be short-term challenges around trying to get the GDP back into double digits, which is where it should sit. Keeping inflation under control, of course, which is very important for any country, but especially here, whilst deploying capital in such a way that attracts greater foreign investment. And indeed, last but not least, ensuring that tax here is collected from an increasingly broader portion of the population. And this vast country with a vast population, everyone has to be aligned now in terms of investment in the country and moving it forward.
Your take on the annual 2021-2022 annual budget. What promises does it hold for Indians in India and the NRIs abroad?
Well, I think in terms of the types of priorities and issues that India needs to overcome in the next 10, 20 years, it started very largely to address many, if not all of them. If you look at the short-term pandemic, of course, and not just to get the population vaccinated, but increasingly to focus on healthcare, an extraordinary 137% uptick in healthcare investment in the country, which is unprecedented and very badly needed here if the country is to really utilize all of this amazing human capital that it has as well. If you look at the infrastructure plays that are going to be invested in terms of the capex here in the country, if you also look at re-energizing this economy through encouragement of privatization, particularly in the financial services, not just public sector banks, but also the insurance company here. And I think that will be an increasingly important element of the modernization drive here. And then last but not least is really having some sort of fiscal policy that is not afraid to borrow, to invest into the country. And I think that has reassured, if you've seen how the markets have reacted over the last 7 days or so, overwhelmingly positive in the short term following the budget. I think also there has been no great change in the taxation regime here for domestic entrepreneurs, which I think also is helpful at this particular juncture. And then last but not least is really throwing open the doors of India to foreign investors who want to come and invest into India, to be partners in India, sometimes to be majority partners in India, to really exploit all of the advantages that India has on the global stage. So it was a very well-received budget here. Time will tell, of course, whether the promises can be delivered upon, but the reaction here, and I think globally, was overwhelmingly thumbs up.
There is a lot of analysis, factual and speculative, on India's economic prowess and progress. A lot of people have projected growth, and they say that India is turning around the corner. Wearing your hat as CEO of True Beacon, would you say that India is going to be one of the leading economies within the next decade?
It's a resounding yes, absolutely. In fact, I think that India is pretty much unstoppable now. The only thing that can stop India is India itself. And I don't say that glibly. I mean that actually some of the policies that India has adopted during this administration and indeed previous administrations about modernization projects and so on will be really key as we go into the next decade. I think for those people, I'm sitting here in south of India in Bangalore. Anyone who's ever been to Bangalore cannot fail to be impressed by the incredible young human capital that we have here in this city and indeed across the country. And that's going to be a major driver of innovation, of entrepreneurship, of technology. These all coming together, I think, is very, very important for the country to realize its potential in the future. But yes, you look at every single metric pretty much across the country. And of course, there are still major issues in India, as there are indeed around other economies. But if you look at the types of human capital we have here, the way that infrastructure is being reformed, the types of deregulation, which is going to enable businesses to be more agile, but retaining first-class, world-class governance, I think all of that bodes really well for the future. And so, yes, I remain an amazing optimist on India and its prospects, not just as it builds this country, but also enhances its presence, both economically and indeed politically, which is important for all of us across the world over the next decade or two.
That's a great takeaway from me. The only thing that can stop India is India itself. I think you've just given me fodder for my headline for this interview. Richard Pattle, thank you so much for taking time off to speak to India Global Business. I really enjoyed your views, and I've learned so much from your perspective on what your views are about the Indian economy and India rising.
Thank you so much, Robin, and best wishes to everyone at India Inc.
Thank you very much for speaking to us.